Ellington once said, "Jazz is like the type of man that you don't want your daughter to associate with." But Edward Kennedy Ellington's parents were intent on raising a dignified son with elegant manners and dapper clothing. For this, Edward earned a nickname from his fourth grade classmates, the Duke. The young Duke loved playing baseball, but he got hit in the head by a baseball bat, so his mother made him start practicing the piano. As a teenager, he snuck into local pool rooms and heard great stride pianists, including U.B. Blake and James P. Johnson. Ellington's love of the piano was ignited, and he started to play gigs in cafes and clubs around Washington, D.C. Duke was also an accomplished painter and was offered an art scholarship to the Pratt Institute. But his brush became the piano, his paint became the musicians, and his canvas was the orchestra. His swing band performed at highfalutin parties for both blacks and whites, a rarity for the day. Ellington decided to move to Harlem, joining the wave of theater, dancing, and jazz, known as the Harlem Renaissance. And Ellington's orchestra became the house band at the mecca of the Harlem Renaissance, the Cotton Club. Other stars there included Ethel Waters, Cab Calloway, Count Basie, and Louis Armstrong. Now, Ellington's band could swing, but his music was really eccentric, nuanced, and reflective. And critics failed to classify their sound, but some settled on the label jungle music. That last Ellington piece was entitled The Black and Tan Fantasy, and before that was Ellington's theme song for many years, composed by Billy Strayhorn, Take the A-Train. We'd like to continue by featuring our drummer Chuck Redd on the vibraphone. This is a Duke composition that he composed along with his trombonist Juan Tizol, entitled Caravan. When the stock market crashed in 1929, Ellington lost his gig at the Cotton Club and the recording industry tanked. But swing dancing became a youth craze across America and throughout the world. Ellington's band toured constantly, and Duke was very proud of his orchestra. He described it as the only band of its kind in the world, the equivalent to a jazz festival that stays organized most of the time. Well, 52 weeks a year anyway. He said, "We would tour 53 weeks, but there aren't 53 weeks." By the end of World War II, public tastes had changed. Popular music became dominated by singers including Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby. Many of the swing bands folded, including Count Basie's orchestra. But Ellington was determined to keep his band working, even occasionally playing gigs on ice skating rinks. We've all been there. He lost several key star soloists, and to many of his fans, Duke's style seemed old-fashioned. This is entitled The Mooch. we'd like to remind you that it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Now, like many band leaders, Ellington was a complicated man. He was a very private person, and in public, he knew how to deflect attention away from his real self. He maintained control of his orchestra members through flattery, humor, and charm. And he also greatly benefited from the songwriting of his band members. Ellington financed his European tours himself through his healthy song royalties. And he famously said, "To keep a big band together, you simply have to have a gimmick. My gimmick is that I pay my musicians." Jazz festivals became an emerging place to hear jazz in America, particularly for younger audiences. And Duke's recording of the 1956 Newport Jazz Festival remains the best-selling Ellington record of all time. With the help of Billy Strayhorn, Duke began to compose longer, more adventuresome works that set him apart from other swing bands. And in 1959, Ellington and Strayhorn composed an entire suite of music dedicated to Queen Elizabeth. But when they made the recording, Duke only had 2 copies made, one for himself and the other for the Queen. It wasn't until 1976, after Duke passed away, when the recording was released to the general public. So now we'd like to play a medley of 2 Ellington pieces from his masterful suites with Strayhorn. First, from his Shakespearean suite, entitled Such Sweet Thunder, the movement which was a tribute to Romeo and Juliet, entitled Star-Crossed Lovers, and after that, from the Queen Suite, Sunset and the Mockingbird. In addition to Ellington's passion for the sounds of New Orleans and Harlem, he embraced European classical music, specifically Chopin, Debussy, and Ravel. Duke famously said, "There are only two kinds of music, good music and the other kind." Perhaps his most musically diverse creation was inspired from an Eastern world tour entitled the Far East Suite. We'd like to perform one movement that was influenced by the culture of Japan. Duke used it as a vehicle to feature his star clarinetist Jimmy Hamilton. It's entitled Ad Lib on Nippon. Well, how about a hand for a very special musician that we're thrilled to be sharing the stage with. He's a graduate of Temple University, and he's a star soloist as the pianist with the U.S. Army Blues. How about a hand for James Collins on the piano? Wow. Yeah, I contacted James a couple weeks ago. I said, hey, I want to play this piece from the Far East Suite called Ad Lib on Nippon. It's like a big Duke Ellington feature. It's very through composed and very exposed. It's really hard. Like, do you think you could check it out? He's like, yeah, no problem. I got this one. So how about another hand for James? Amazing. Also a resident of Baltimore, Maryland, a great friend of ours we've been playing with for many years, and he just is always super cool on the bandstand and off the bandstand. Such a great guy to hang out with and play with. How about Blake Meister on the bass? Yeah. Back there on the bass drum, the floor tom, the rack tom, the snare drum, the hi-hat cymbal, many other cymbals, the vibraphone, and most of all, the finger cymbals. I mean, I've never heard a better finger cymbal player than you. A great friend of ours who we've known since we were in high school, and he's played all over the world with John Pizzarelli and Monty Alexander. In fact, he was picked up as a teenager by a trumpet player who you may have heard of by the name of Dizzy Gillespie. And we're so thrilled to, whenever we get to perform with him, whether it be on a recording or in New York or the DC area, all over, we're so honored. How about a hand for Chuck Red? Also over here on the soprano saxophone, the tenor saxophone, and the clarinet, a gentleman originally from Bethesda, Maryland, who I've known for many years. By the way, if you aren't familiar with the soprano saxophone, this is what happens when you put a tenor sax in the dryer. That's how you get one of those. But he's a great soloist, and in fact, he arranged all the music that you're hearing this evening, because a lot of this Duke Ellington music was written for jazz orchestra, but to get it down to 5 pieces is quite a challenge. How about a hand for my older twin brother, Peter Anderson? Last and least, yours truly on the alto saxophone, Will Anderson. Thank you. Well, it's such a thrill for my brother Peter and I to be here. We're originally from Bethesda, Maryland, just born right down the road at the hospital here, GW Hospital. And whenever we get to come back to our hometown, it just warms our hearts. So thank you all so much for being here. How about a round of applause for you all? Thank you. We're driving back to New York City tonight because that's where we're based these days. So if you want to keep up with where we'll be at the Blue Note Jazz Club on March 8th, and then back at Birdland Jazz Club on March 25th. So check out our calendar for all of our upcoming dates. Also this evening we have available in the back our recordings, our CDs, as well as a brand new book release that I wrote all about many of the great composers of the last century, including a chapter on Duke Ellington. And the CDs and the books actually are free of charge. We're not charging anything, but the autographs are $20, and it's a package deal. You can't get one without the other. That's the way that works. So thank you all so much again for being here. It's just a thrill to perform in this beautiful space at the Kennedy Center. How about a hand for everyone who works here and makes this possible? Thank you. Well, just a few closing comments about Duke Ellington, because he was such a special musician and composer. And throughout his lifetime, he earned 14 Grammy Awards. And after his death, he also won a Pulitzer Prize for his contribution to American culture. And the street where he lived in Manhattan on 106th Street was named Duke Ellington Boulevard. And we'd like to conclude with an Ellington composition that's typically used for musicians to battle on. So we're going to have a little battle, and at the end you're going to get a little sheet and you can vote who wins. And whoever loses has to drive home. So we sincerely want to thank you all for the way you've inspired us and remind you that you are very beautiful, very sweet, very gracious, very generous, and we do love you madly. That's how Duke Ellington would finish all of his concerts. We hope you enjoy our version of Things Ain't What They Used to Be.
Thank you for joining us at Millennium Stage. For more information about upcoming shows, please check out the Kennedy Center website or Facebook page. At this time, we ask that you please head to the back of the seating area so we can safely put away our chairs, where you can also conveniently find our merchandise table. As you exit, you will find QR codes to complete a brief survey on your experience today.